Goodbye to Officer Daniel Granger, a decorated hero, a beloved husband, and a partner to one very special German shepherd. At the foot of the casket sat Rex, Daniel's loyal K9 companion. He wore his black vest with the word police stitched boldly across the side, but Rex didn't sit still. He let out a low whine, then a soft bark. At first, no one paid attention. They assumed he was just grieving, confused by the crowd and the absence of his partner's voice. The quiet sobs of mourners echoed through the chapel, blending with the faint rustle of uniforms as officers shifted in their seats. Then Rex's behavior changed. His ears pricked up sharply, his body stiffened. He stood on all fours, muscles tense, eyes locked on the casket. His tail froze in place, as a deep growl rumbled from his chest. Suddenly he began barking sharp, loud, desperate. The sound echoed through the room like an alarm bell. People turned their heads, whispering, confused. An officer beside Rex tugged gently at his leash, murmuring, "Easy, boy, easy." But Rex wouldn't budge. His paws scraped at the polished wood of the casket, claws clicking in frantic rhythm. The room grew unsettled. Daniel's widow looked up, startled. Rex had never behaved like this before. His bark wasn't sorrowful, it was a signal. A message. Murmurs spread quickly across the rows of mourners. Some thought the dog was simply overwhelmed with grief, acting out in confusion. But to the veteran officers, men and women who had spent years with working dogs, there was something different, something chillingly familiar. This wasn't panic, it wasn't fear. It was alertness, focus, the kind of intensity only a K9 shows when he's onto something. Officer Bryant, Daniel's closest colleague, rose quietly from his seat and walked forward. He crouched beside Rex, his voice calm but firm. "What is it, boy? What are you trying to tell us?" Rex barked again, sharper, his nose pressing against the base of the casket. His body trembled, not. The chapel grew utterly silent. Every eye was fixed on the coffin where Rex kept pawing and barking. But this was not ordinary barking, there was urgency in it. Almost like he was trying to speak for the one who could not. Officer Bryan held tightly onto the leash, but Rex's strength nearly tore it from his grip. Bryan's gut twisted. He had worked with the dog for years and knew this was no mistake. Rex had sensed something. The widow's face went pale, her tears suddenly freezing on her cheeks. With trembling lips she whispered, Why is he doing this? What's happening?" Bryan crouched beside Rex, staring into the animal's glowing eyes. They weren't wild. They were pleading, begging him to open the coffin, and then it came soft at first, but unmistakable. Thump, thump, the sound of knocking. From inside the coffin, gasps erupted across the room. Some people clutched their mouths, others staggered back. One man muttered, No, that's impossible." The priest shook his head violently, trying to convince himself as much as the others. "It's grief. Illusions. People hear things in sorrow. But then it came again, louder this time. Thump, thump. Rex went wild, barking furiously, scratching at the wood as if to tear it open with his own paws. Bryan's voice thundered through the silence. "This is no illusion. Open the coffin, now." The funeral attendants froze, paralyzed between duty and fear. The widow clutched her chest, her breath shallow. The knocking inside grew frantic. Every beat echoed like a nightmare in the chapel. Something or someone was still alive. The chapel had descended into chaos. Some guests screamed, others pressed against the doors, desperate to escape the sound echoing from the coffin, but Rex refused to budge. His claws tore at the polished wood floor, his teeth bared, his body a shield between the casket and the terrified mourners. Officer Bryan's voice cracked with urgency. "Get the tools, crowbar, axe, anything?" "Now." Two attendants, pale and trembling, hesitated at first. But the pounding from inside the coffin grew louder, boom, boom, boo, as though a trapped soul was fighting for every breath of air left inside. Finally, one man sprinted toward the utility room. The widow collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Her hands shook as she grabbed Bryan's sleeve. Please tell me this isn't true. He Can't be alive. I saw him. I saw him. Brian's single quote's jaw clenched. He couldn't answer her, not yet. He stared at the coffin, sweat dripping down his temples. His instincts as an officer screamed danger, but another part of him whispered hope. Rex let out a long, desperate howl that silenced the room. It wasn't the howl of a dog. It was the cry of a creature that knew death, and knew it hadn't arrived yet. At last, the attendant returned with a crowbar. His hands shook so violently the metal clattered against the coffin lid. Brian took it from him and planted his foot against the base. With a grunt, he forced the iron under the seam. Crack! The wood splintered. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Some people couldn't watch, covering their eyes. Others leaned in, unable to tear themselves away. Brian drove the bar deeper. Crack! Snap! The lid groaned as though resisting. Rex barked wildly, leaping with every strike. And then it opened. A sliver of light pierced the darkness inside. A hand trembling, pale, dirt under the fingernails thrust upward into the chapel air. Screams filled the room. The widow fainted. Someone shouted, "Dear God, he's alive." Brian dropped the crowbar, his heart racing. The chapel felt like it had been struck by lightning. Guests stumbled back, their whispers clashing like a storm. Some cried, others muttered prayers, and a few even ran for the exit, terrified of what they had just witnessed. The man in the coffin, pale, weak, eyes bloodshot, clutched Brian's arm with desperate strength. His nails dug into the officer's sleeve as he repeated, barely above a rasp, "They buried me because I knew the truth." Brian bent closer, straining to hear, double quote, "What truth? Who did this to you?" But the man's breathing was shallow, ragged, every word costing him strength. His chest heaved as if the very act of being alive was painful. Rex whined, licking the man's hand, his tail wagging in frantic relief. The bond between dog and master was undeniable. Tears welled in the eyes of onlookers who had thought they were attending a funeral, now finding themselves witnessing a miracle or a nightmare. Suddenly, two men from the back of the chapel exchanged a look. Their faces hardened, their bodies stiffened. Unlike the others, they didn't seem shocked, they seemed angry. One of them muttered something under his breath and slipped toward the side door. Brian noticed. His instincts flared like sirens. Stay where you are. He barked, his hand moving toward his holster. But before he could act, the faint man inside the coffin gripped his sleeve tighter and whispered with terrifying urgency, "Don't let them leave. They work for him." The words froze Brian's blood. Him? Who? The widow stirred, regaining consciousness, her eyes widening at the sight of her husband sitting upright, fighting to breathe. She screamed in horror and confusion. No, this can't be real. You were dead." The man looked at her with a sorrowful intensity, as if seeing her for the last time. His lips trembled. "They wanted me gone." "So you'd never know." Gasps erupted again. Brian's grip on his gun tightened. "Who wanted you gone?" "Tell me." But before the answer came, chaos grew. Screams filled the chapel as the knife clattered across the floor. Rex growled fiercely, refusing to release the attacker's arm. Blood dripped onto the polished wooden tiles, mixing with the echo of chaos. "Hold him!" Brian shouted, rushing forward. Two guests, brave enough to act, grabbed the wounded man by the shoulders, forcing him to the ground. His face twisted with rage, not fear. "You don't understand." The man spat through gritted teeth. "He was supposed to stay buried?" The words sent a shiver down everyone's spine. Brian kicked the knife away, his gun still trained. He glanced at the other man who had bolted for the exit. The church doors slammed open as the figure escaped into the daylight. Brian cursed under his breath. He couldn't chase both threats at once. Behind him, the man in the coffin weakly raised his trembling hand, pointing toward the fleeing figure. His lips barely moved, but Brian caught the whispered name. "Harper!" The widow gasped, clutching her chest. "No, not Harper. He's our family friend." The frail man's eyes blazed with fury despite his weakness. "He's no friend. He orchestrated this. The guests murmured, horrified, as the name spread like wildfire among them. Brian's mind raced. He couldn't let the truth slip away, but he also couldn't let the frail man die before giving answers. He knelt beside the casket. Listen to me. You're safe now, but I need the full story. Why would Harper want you dead? The man's breathing was shallow, but determination kept him alive. His words came in fragments. He discovered what I knew. Money, corruption, secrets buried deeper than me. He coughed violently, his body convulsing, Rex whining desperately beside him. Brian pressed gently on his shoulder. Stay with me. We'll get you to a hospital. You're not dying here. But the widow suddenly fell to her knees, clutching her husband's cold hand. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, They'll kill us all if you speak. Please. The chapel was no longer a sanctuary. The air felt heavy with fear, whispers of betrayal running like electricity through the crowd. Guests huddled together, glancing nervously at the restrained attacker whose laughter still echoed off the stone walls. Brian signaled two officers who had just arrived, ordering them to cuff the man, take him outside, and get an ambulance here now. He barked, but the attacker only smirked, blood staining his teeth. You can't save him, he hissed, nodding toward the frail man in the coffin. And when he dies, the truth dies with him. Rex growled, tugging against his leash as if sensing the danger was far from over. The widow clung tightly to her husband's hand, whispering frantic prayers. Yet her earlier words, please don't speak, lingered in Brian's mind like poison. Was she protecting her husband or protecting Harper? Brian leaned closer to the coffin, lowering his voice. Listen to me, you don't have much time. What secret could Harper kill for? The man's eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain. He coughed, his lips trembling as he forced out the words. Funds. Hidden overseas, stolen from charities. Harper, he used my name to cover it. The revelation hit Brian like a gunshot. Corruption, money laundering, this wasn't just about one man. This was a network. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the chapel. A window shattered as a smoke canister rolled across the floor, hissing thick white clouds into the air. Guests screamed, coughing, stumbling blindly. Down, everyone down! Brian shouted, pulling the widow toward the ground. He covered the frail man's body as Rex barked furiously, teeth bared at the smoke. Through the chaos, Brian caught the silhouette of a man slipping through the broken window. He didn't need to guess, it was Harper. Stay here, Brian ordered, sprinting toward the window. His lungs burned as the smoke swallowed him, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He leapt outside into the blinding daylight, gun drawn. The sirens wailed in the distance, but Brian wasn't waiting for backup. He had seen the look in Harper's eyes as the SUV tore away cold, calculated, untouchable. Harper wasn't running. He was moving the game to a new board. Inside the chapel, chaos still reigned. Guests were ushered out by police officers, some coughing violently, others trembling from the shock. The widow knelt by her husband's still body, her sobs echoing in the emptied hall. Brian crouched beside her. Ma'am, I need you to listen. Your husband mentioned records in the old church cellar. Do you know where that is? Through her tears, she shook her head. No. But Father Matthews might. He oversaw every part of this church. As if summoned, the old priest appeared from the smoke-filled hallway, his white robe stained with ash. His face was pale but calm, his voice low. The cellar, it was sealed decades ago. Few even remember it exists. Brian's jaw tightened. If Harper knew about it, then it meant only one thing: he was already moving to destroy whatever evidence was left. He turned to the officers. Secure the widow, no one in or out without my clearance. Then to Rex. Let's hunt. The priest hesitated. Detective, if you go down there, be careful. That cellar holds more than dust and shadows. Secrets were buried for a reason. Brian ignored the warning. He and Rex followed the priest through a narrow stone corridor hidden behind the altar. The air grew colder with every step, the smell of damp earth filling their lungs. At the end of the passage stood a rusted iron door. The priest handed Brian an old brass key. This is the only one. Be ready for what you find. Brian slid the key into the lock. With a groan, the door creaked open, revealing a staircase spiraling into darkness. Rex's ears twitched, his growl low. Brian whispered, "Easy, boy." He flicked on his flashlight and began the descent. Dust swirled in the beam, cobwebs clinging to the walls. The silence was suffocating untie. The fire spread faster than Brian expected. The dry papers, the old wood everything fed the blaze in seconds. Heat seared his skin, sweat dripping as smoke began to choke the cellar. "Drop the files, Harper!" Brian shouted, his gun steady, but Harper didn't move. He stood in the inferno like a man untouchable, flames reflecting in his cold eyes. "You think shooting me will stop the truth?" "From burning?" he mocked. "Every second you hesitate, decades of evidence vanish." Rex barked furiously, tugging at Brian's sleeve, urging him to act. The flames were licking closer to the stairwell, their only exit. Brian's instincts screamed. If he fired, the bullet could ricochet off the stone walls. If he lunged, Harper could ignite the rest of the files. Time was running out. With a swift motion, Brian holstered his gun and hurled a heavy metal file box at Harper. The impact struck his shoulder, knocking the lighter from his grip. Harper cursed, stumbling back into the smoke. "Rex, go!" Brian commanded. The dog lunged, teeth flashing. Harper twisted away, but Rex's jaws clamped onto his coat, dragging him toward the ground. Brian sprinted forward, kicking the burning pile aside, stomping out flames with his boots. The papers were charred, but not completely destroyed. He grabbed what he could, shoving documents into his coat. Then bang! The gunshot echoed like thunder. Dust and sparks rained from the ceiling. Harper had pulled a concealed pistol, the shot narrowly missing Brian's head. Brian dove behind a cabinet, heart pounding. He returned fire, bullets cracking. Through the smoke? The cellar became a battleground of fire and shadows. Rex growled, refusing to release Harper. Harper fired again, the shot grazing Rex's ear. The dog yelped but didn't let go, his strength fueled by loyalty. Brian seized the moment. He charged, tackling Harper into the stone wall. The files Harper clutched scattered across the floor. One page drifted into the flames, curling into ash, but the stairwell shook as flames climbed higher, groaning beams ready to give way. Brian's lungs burned, every breath a war against the choking smoke. He still had Harper in his grip, the man fighting like a demon possessed. "Let me go!" Harper spat, twisting, his voice hoarse. "Save the damn papers if you care so much." Brian shoved him forward, refusing to let go. "You're not dying down here. You'll answer for what you've done." But Harper laughed, even as fire licked closer. "You think justice lives in a courtroom?" "No, detective. Justice lives in the secrets people can't face. Once those secrets are gone, so is your power." The words cut deeper than Brian expected, but he couldn't stop now. Rex barked ahead, guiding them through the smoke toward the narrow exit. Halfway up the stairs, a thunderous crack split the air. A burning beam collapsed, blocking the path with fire and debris. Brian shielded his face, instinctively covering Harper too. For a moment, both men froze. The way out was nearly gone. Rex barked desperately, circling back, searching for another way. Brian coughed hard, his vision blurring. He shoved Harper against the wall, pinning him there. "Tell me the backup," Brian demanded through clenched teeth. "You never keep only one set of records. Where's the other archive?" Harper's eyes gleamed, even in the smoke. "You really want to know? Then you'd better keep me alive, detective." Brian pressed harder, rage mixing with desperation. "Talk, ." But Harper smirked, bloodied teeth showing. "Why rush? The fire decides who speaks and who burns." Suddenly, Rex darted toward a half-hidden door behind a fallen cabinet. He barked, sharply scratching at the wood. Brian's heart kicked an alternate passage. With all his strength, Brian shoved the cabinet aside, coughing violently as flames roared closer. He yanked the door open. Stone steps spiraled upward into darkness. A hidden escape. Brian grabbed Harper's collar again. "Move!" But Harper resisted. Place. Brian's chest heaved, every breath scraping like glass against his throat. The hidden stairwell yawned open, promising escape. Behind him, the fire screamed louder, hungry, devouring everything left in its path. Harper still stood rooted, defiance carved deep into his smoke-stained face. "You can't carry both me and the truth out of here," he rasped, coughing hard. "So choose, detective. Which one do you save?" Brian's eyes flicked between the scattered files, half-charred but still intact, and the broken man before him. Years of training told him the evidence mattered more than the criminal. But years of humanity told him a life, no matter how tainted, was not his to take. Rex barked furiously, as if urging Brian not to hesitate. The ceiling groaned again, dust raining down. In another minute, the entire structure would collapse. "Move!" Brian shouted, seizing Harper's arm. The man tried to wrench away, but this time Brian's grip was iron, with a surge of raw strength. He dragged Harper through the narrow doorway, Rex darting ahead to clear the path. The hidden staircase was suffocatingly tight, stones damp and cold against Brian's hands as they stumbled upward. Smoke still clawed at them, chasing from below. Harper tripped, nearly falling, but Brian hauled him forward with stubborn fury. At last, a rusted grate above gave way, and the three of them spilled out into the open night. Cool air rushed into Brian's lungs, sharp and sweet. Behind them, the building collapsed in a roaring inferno, sparks exploding into the sky. Harper lay sprawled on the grass, coughing blood. His eyes, glassy but burning with twisted satisfaction, locked onto Brian. "You saved me." But the truth burned. "You've got nothing now." Brian staggered, staring back at the flames. Maybe Harper was right. Maybe the evidence was gone. But Brian also knew one thing. Harper's survival meant testimony, trial, and exposure. And sometimes living was a harsher punishment than dying in silence.